Here's something you may not want to hear. Talent won't save you, luck won't save you, even hard work won't save you. Without self-discipline, all of it slips through your fingers. But with discipline, even the smallest effort multiplies, and even the humblest person can rise to greatness. In this video, I want to show you how to build self-discipline, not as a vague idea, but as a practical mindset you can live by. You'll learn why discipline is more powerful than talent, why it succeeds where motivation fails, and how it can become the single greatest force for change in your life. You'll see the contrast between a life ruled by feelings and impulses, and a life directed by purpose and discipline. And most of all, you'll discover how to cultivate discipline until it becomes a habit, something you can rely on even in the most difficult moments. By the end of this journey, you'll have the framework to turn every desire into achievement, every plan into reality. Most people struggle with discipline not because they're weak, but because they've misunderstood what it really is. They think discipline means punishment, denial, or a kind of rigid, joyless life. Nothing could be further from the truth. Real discipline is freedom. It frees you from the control of moods and impulses. It frees you from the frustration of starting and stopping. It frees you from the endless cycle of wishing without achieving. Think about it. The people you admire most, the ones who seem to accomplish great things, aren't superhuman. They've simply learned the secret of discipline. They do what others delay. They persist when others quit, and as a result they reach places most never see. That's the power of self-discipline, and once you understand it, you'll never envy another man's life, because you'll know you can build your own. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to explore the mindset of self-discipline in a way that will change how you see yourself and your future. First, we'll uncover why discipline, not motivation, is the real key to success. Then we'll talk about how discipline is built not overnight, not through sheer force of will, but through simple, repeated actions. After that, we'll look at the role of vision and goals, because discipline without direction is wasted energy. Then we'll examine the daily habits that keep discipline alive when enthusiasm fades. And finally, I'll share with you a practical framework, something you can begin today to build the discipline that carries you through every challenge. Along the way, I'll share truths and examples that may surprise you, but once you hear them, you'll see why discipline is the missing link in most people's lives, and why it can be the defining factor in yours. Here's something most people completely miss, and it may surprise you. The reason so many fail to reach their goals is not because they lack motivation. In fact, most people are motivated at one time or another. They feel the excitement of a new beginning, they talk about their plans, they start strong. But then, when the excitement fades, so does their effort. And that's the problem. Motivation is temporary. It depends on moods, on feelings, on circumstances. Discipline is different. Discipline endures when the feelings fade. And this single difference explains why some succeed and most do not. Think about it. Each year in January, health clubs and gyms across the country are filled to overflowing. New members crowd in, eager to change their lives. They're motivated, they're excited. They can see in their minds the picture of a healthier body, a stronger future. But by February, the crowd has thinned. By March, most of those same people have disappeared. What happened? Did the machines change? Did the weights get heavier? Did the doors close? No. What changed was the motivation. It burned brightly for a short time, then it vanished. And with it, vanished the effort. That's the weakness of motivation. It can start you, but it cannot sustain you. Now, why does this matter so much? Because life's greatest achievements take more than a few days or weeks. They take years. They require steady, unbroken effort long after the initial excitement is gone. If you depend on motivation, you will rise and fall with your moods. You'll work when you feel good and quit when you don't. You'll begin many things but finish few. You'll build castles in the air, but you'll never live in them. And at the end of it all, you'll wonder why others, no more gifted than you, seemed to climb higher, while you remained where you started. The answer is discipline. They acted when they didn't feel like it. They kept going when enthusiasm died. They understood that motivation may light the match, but only discipline keeps the fire burning. Let me give you a picture. Imagine two men. The first works only when he feels like it. He waits for inspiration, for the mood to strike. Some days he works, some days he doesn't. He starts projects, but leaves them unfinished. He is a slave to how he feels. The second man, no more talented, makes a different choice. He decides that whether he feels like it or not, he will act. He will rise at the same hour, he will follow his plan, he will persist. At first, the difference between them is small, but as the months pass, the gap widens. After a year, the second man has built a habit of discipline, while the first has built only a trail of excuses. After 10 years, the second man stands on the mountaintop, while the first is still wandering in the foothills, looking for a new burst of motivation. That is the power of discipline over motivation. So here is what you must understand. Motivation is a spark. It's useful, it can light the flame, but it is not the fire itself. The fire is discipline. And until you build it, success will always be out of reach. But once you do, once discipline becomes the guiding force of your life, you will discover a new kind of freedom. You'll no longer be ruled by moods or feelings. You'll act because you've chosen to act. And in that moment, you'll possess a strength that very few ever find. Now here's something that may feel strange the first time you hear it, but once you let it sink in, you'll never see discipline the same way again. Real discipline is not punishment. It isn't the loss of freedom. It isn't restriction. In truth, it is the very opposite. Discipline is freedom. It frees you from being a slave to your moods. It frees you from being dragged around by every impulse, every distraction, every passing desire. Discipline is the master key that unlocks a life of self-respect, progress, and lasting success. Think for a moment about the man without discipline. He rises when he feels like it, if he feels like it. He works when the mood strikes, if it strikes at all. He spends money when he wants, eats what he wants, says what he wants. At first glance he appears free, but look closer. That man is bound. He is bound by habit, bound by impulse, bound by regret. He is like a ship without a rudder. It moves, yes, but only where the winds push it, never where he chooses. He confuses the absence of rules with freedom, when in reality it is the heaviest chain a man can wear. Now look at the man of discipline. He rises at the hour he has chosen, whether he feels like it or not. He works steadily on his goal, regardless of his moods. He controls his spending, his appetites, his speech. To some, this looks like restriction. But what does he gain? He gains mastery over himself. He gains respect for his own word. He gains the freedom to choose his direction, to steer his ship where he wants it to go. He is not a victim of moods or impulses. He is free. And that is the paradox of discipline. It may feel like limitation, but it produces the greatest liberty a man can know. Think of the rudder of a ship. It restricts movement. It limits the vessel from drifting aimlessly with the current. But that limitation is what makes the journey possible. Without it, the ship wanders until it wrecks. With it, the ship crosses oceans and reaches its chosen port. Discipline is that rudder. It may seem to confine you, but it is the very thing that makes progress possible. Without it, you may be busy, you may even be exhausted, but you will not advance. With it, you move steadily toward your destination, no matter how far it may seem. The proof is everywhere if you care to look. The student who disciplines himself to study when others are playing becomes the man who leads. The craftsman who disciplines himself to master his tools when others are idle becomes the master others admire. The entrepreneur who disciplines himself to persist when others quit builds the enterprise that outlasts them all. These are not extraordinary people. They are ordinary men and women who discovered the extraordinary freedom that comes from discipline. And here is the great lesson. Once you taste that freedom, you will never go back. Because nothing in the world compares to the quiet strength of knowing you can rely on yourself, that you will do what you said you would do, that no impulse, no temptation, no passing mood can dictate the course of your life. That is what discipline gives you. And that is why, though most people avoid it, though they confuse it with punishment, discipline remains the foundation of every great achievement. It is the freedom to live by choice instead of chance, by design instead of drift. So I ask you to see discipline not as a chain, but as the key. Not as something that takes from you, but as something that gives you the greatest gift of all: freedom. Freedom from regret, freedom from wasted time, freedom from mediocrity. Discipline is the beginning of mastery, and once you build it, you will find that the life you once thought impossible has been within your reach all along. Here's something that changed everything for me when I first grasped it. Discipline is not built in a day. It isn't the result of one enormous effort, one dramatic stand, or one heroic burst of willpower. Discipline is built the same way a wall is built, one brick at a time, placed carefully and steadily until the structure is complete. Most people never develop discipline because they expect it to come all at once. They try to remake their entire lives in a single week, to change every habit overnight, and when the effort collapses under its own weight, they believe they've failed. But they haven't failed. They've only misunderstood the law of growth. Think of the muscles of the body. No man ever became strong by lifting a heavy weight once. Strength is not the product of a single act, but of repeated acts, day after day, until the muscles adapt and grow. Discipline is the same. It is a muscle of the mind and will. You strengthen it not by dramatic gestures, but by steady practice. Each time you do the thing you said you would do, whether you feel like it or not, you place another brick in the wall. Each time you rise at the hour you set, each time you finish the task you began, each time you resist the impulse to quit, you build discipline, and over time, that steady practice becomes strength. This is why I've often spoken about the 30-day test. For 30 days, take one single thought, one single goal, and hold it before your mind. Refuse to allow negative thoughts to take root. Each time doubt or distraction appears, replace it with a picture of your goal already achieved. At first, it feels difficult. The old habits of thought fight back. But as the days pass, something changes. The repetition begins to carve a groove in the mind, a path that grows deeper and stronger until it becomes natural. What began as effort becomes habit. What began as struggle becomes ease. That is how discipline is built, not by one burst of effort, but by small acts, repeated until they shape who you are. Now, why is this so important? Because most people give up too soon. They believe discipline must be dramatic, so they wait for the perfect time, the perfect plan, the perfect burst of will, and in waiting they waste their lives. The truth is simpler. You can begin today. Choose one small discipline and practice it daily. It may be rising at a certain hour. It may be writing one page. It may be saving $1. The size of the act does not matter. What matters is the repetition. For repetition, more than inspiration, is the builder of character. Let me give you a picture. A man decides he wants to read more. So he sets aside 15 minutes each morning. 15 minutes seems small, almost insignificant, but he does it each day. After a year, he has read more books than he had in the previous decade. His knowledge has grown, his thinking has deepened, his character has strengthened, and all of it was built not by sudden bursts, but by small acts repeated. The same is true in every area of life. One discipline, practiced daily, multiplies over time into strength and success that others will call extraordinary, though it was built in the simplest way imaginable. So here is the truth. Discipline is not born of emotion. It is born of repetition. It is not an event, it is a process. And the process begins the moment you choose one act and repeat it until it becomes part of you. That is the quiet secret behind every great achievement. Not fireworks, but steady steps. Not drama, but persistence. Small acts, repeated until they build the unshakable strength of self-discipline. Here's a truth that most people never stop to recognize. Everything we repeatedly do eventually becomes easier, not because the task itself changes, but because we change. That is the law of habit. At first, every act of discipline feels heavy. Rising early feels unnatural. Refusing that second helping feels unpleasant. Finishing the project when fatigue sets in feels almost unbearable. But each time you do it, the weight grows lighter. Not because life has altered, but because you have. The mind begins to carve new grooves. The will grows stronger, the resistance weaker, until what once required effort now happens almost without thought. and that is when discipline transforms into habit. Think of a child learning to brush his teeth. At first he resists. He forgets. He must be reminded. The act requires discipline. But over time, repetition does its work. Years later, that same child, now grown, brushes his teeth without thinking about it. It requires no willpower, no debate, no struggle. It has become habit. The discipline, once difficult, is now automatic, and the same law applies to every area of life. What is difficult today, practiced faithfully, will one day be easy. This is why I often compare habits to paths in a field. Walk across fresh grass once, and the trail disappears. Walk it again the next day, and it begins to show. Walk it every day for a month, and a clear path forms. Keep walking, and that path becomes a road, something you follow without effort, without thought. The mind works the same way. Each choice, each act of discipline, each repetition lays down a trail. At first, it takes effort. But soon the trail deepens, and the act becomes natural. In time, it becomes difficult not to do it. That is the power of habit. Now, why does this matter so much? Because most people give up before they reach that point. They struggle with a new habit for a week or two, then say, "This is too hard, it isn't for me." They quit just before the act would have begun to feel natural. They abandon the trail before it becomes a road. And so they remain trapped, repeating the same old patterns, believing discipline is impossible, when in truth they were only a few steps away from freedom. The greatest secret of habit is that it changes identity. At first you say, "I will practice this discipline." But after repetition has done its work, you say, "I am this kind of person." The runner who forces himself out of bed each morning eventually becomes the man who cannot imagine a day without running. The writer who struggles to put words on paper each night eventually becomes the man who cannot imagine not writing. The saver who fights the urge to spend eventually becomes the man who cannot imagine living without saving. Discipline practiced long enough becomes part of who you are, and that is the moment you are no longer forcing yourself, you are simply living in alignment with your own character. So how do you apply this law? Begin with one habit. Repeat it daily. Understand that the struggle at the beginning is not a sign of weakness but a sign that you are laying the trail. Expect resistance, expect effort. But keep going. Each repetition strengthens the path until one day you realize the struggle is gone. You no longer think about it, you simply do it. And in that moment, discipline has become habit, and habit has become character. That is the true reward of repetition. That is the law of habit at work. Now we come to a truth that separates those who endure in discipline from those who give it up. You see, discipline in itself is like a strong horse, powerful, enduring, capable of great work. But without a rider, without a destination, that horse will wander in circles, burning energy but arriving nowhere. In the same way, discipline without vision, without goals, is wasted energy. It may produce routine, but it will not produce progress. It may fill time, but it will not create success. Discipline requires a worthy ideal, a definite aim, to give it direction. Without that, it becomes drudgery, and sooner or later it collapses. This is why I've often defined success in the simplest possible words. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. That means you are successful the moment you decide what you want and begin moving toward it. Not when you achieve it, but the very moment you set your course and take the first step. The school teacher who teaches because she chose that path, the salesman who works toward being the best in his field, the mother who devotes herself to raising her children well, each of these people is already successful because each is living deliberately, guided by a goal. Their discipline has meaning because it is tied to a vision of their own choosing. Think of the contrast. Picture a ship leaving harbor. One has a destination charted, a captain at the helm, and a course set. Another has no map, no aim, no plan. Both ships are seaworthy, both can endure storms. But only one will arrive at a chosen port, the other will drift until it wrecks. That is the difference between discipline tied to a goal and discipline left aimless. One carries you steadily toward a life you have chosen. The other keeps you busy but leaves you empty. Now, why is this so critical? Because discipline without direction feels like slavery. It feels heavy, joyless, empty. You rise each day, you follow routines, you work, you persist, but to what end? Without a goal, without a vision of where it leads, discipline begins to feel meaningless. And when it feels meaningless, it dies. That is why so many people give up. They had the habit, they had the effort, but they lacked the vision. And so their discipline, instead of liberating them, weighed them down. I once told the story of a lawyer who had achieved everything he once dreamed of. He had a fine home, a respected career, a wife and family, a good income. By outward measure, he was successful. Yet he confessed to me that he felt restless, unhappy, even depressed. Why? Because he had stopped setting goals. He had arrived at the destination he once chose, but he never chose another. And so, his discipline lost its meaning. He still worked, he still kept routines, but without a new vision to fuel them, they became hollow. His ladder was still there, but it leaned against the wrong wall or no wall at all. This is why vision is not optional. It is the fuel that makes discipline possible. It gives fire to routine, meaning to effort, joy to repetition. It reminds you why you are rising early, why you are saving, why you are studying, why you are persisting when it would be easier to quit. A man who knows his goal does not resent the discipline, he embraces it, because each act carries him closer to what he desires most. Without the goal, the same act feels like a chain. With the goal, it feels like freedom. So how do you apply this? Begin by choosing one definite goal. Write it down, make it clear, make it specific. Carry it with you. Tie your daily disciplines to it. Each time you act, remind yourself, this is bringing me closer to my goal. And here's the remarkable thing, when discipline is fueled by vision, it becomes lighter, not heavier. The repetition becomes satisfying, because you can see the connection between today's act and tomorrow's achievement. That is why goals are not just important, they are indispensable. They are the fire that keeps discipline alive, the compass that keeps it straight, the destination that makes every step worth taking. Discipline is not something you practice only in grand moments of decision. It is something you live each day, in the smallest of acts, repeated so often they become the quiet framework of your life. If vision is the fire that fuels discipline, then daily habits are the wood that keeps that fire burning. Without them, even the brightest flame will flicker out. But with them, it grows stronger and steadier with each passing day. Most people never discover this, because they look for discipline in dramatic acts, heroic efforts, sweeping changes, bold declarations. Yet the truth is that discipline is built not in moments of drama, but in the quiet, ordinary routines of daily life. Think of the farmer who tends his fields. He does not wait until harvest season to act. He does not work only when he feels like it. Each day he rises, he prepares the soil, he tends the crops, he pulls the weeds, he watches over the field. To the outsider, these acts may seem small, repetitive, even dull. But the farmer knows the harvest depends on them. Skip a day, neglect the habit, and the weeds will grow. Skip many days, and the field will be lost. In the same way, your life depends on the daily habits that seem small but hold great power. They are the quiet acts of discipline that ensure your harvest. Now, what do these habits look like in practice? They can be as simple as rising early and beginning the day with intention instead of drifting. They can be the habit of planning each morning, taking 10 minutes to write down the tasks that matter most, and then giving yourself to them before distraction steals your time. They can be the habit of gratitude, pausing each day to reflect on what you already have, which strengthens your attitude and keeps your perspective clear. They can be the habit of reviewing your goals, keeping them fresh in your mind so that each day's work is tied to a larger vision. They can even be the habit of tackling the hardest task first, building strength for the rest of the day. Each of these is small in itself, but over time, they anchor discipline in your life until it becomes unshakable. Consider the story of a man I once knew who wanted to change his life, but didn't know where to begin. He felt overwhelmed, defeated by the scale of what he hoped to achieve. So he chose one habit, rising an hour earlier each morning and using that hour to study and plan. At first, it was difficult. His old habit was to sleep late, to drift into the day without direction, but he persisted. Soon, that one habit began to shape everything else. His mind grew sharper, his days more focused, his goals clearer. That single habit became a cornerstone, from which new habits grew, until his entire life was transformed. It did not begin with a dramatic leap. It began with a simple, daily act of discipline. Why do these daily habits matter so much? Because they create consistency. They ensure that your discipline is not something you rely on only when you feel inspired, but something woven into the fabric of your life. They free you from the need to make constant decisions, because the decision is already made. Each morning you rise and act, not because you feel like it, but because it is who you are. And in time these habits compound. Like the steady growth of a tree, they build strength, slowly, invisibly, until one day you realize that what once felt like effort is now simply your way of life. So here is what I urge you to do. Choose one keystone habit, one small act you can practice daily, and begin there. It may be rising early, writing a page, saving $1, exercising for 15 minutes, or reading for half an hour. Whatever it is, let it be simple, repeatable, and tied to your larger vision. Practice it daily until it becomes automatic. Then add another, and another. Over time, these small habits will create a structure of discipline so strong that nothing can shake it. Discipline is not built in grand resolutions. It is built in daily acts, lived quietly but lived consistently. And once you anchor discipline in your daily habits, you will find that it is no longer a struggle. It has become your way of life. And that way of life, lived day after day, will carry you further than motivation or talent ever could. Now we come to the final piece of the puzzle, the one that separates fleeting discipline from lasting mastery. Because even once you've learned that motivation will fail you, even once you've built habits, even once you've tied them to goals, there remains the greatest test of all: persistence. Most people can discipline themselves for a day, a week, perhaps even a few months, but the real fruits of discipline, the kind that transform lives, build fortunes, shape character, and leave a legacy, do not appear in weeks or months. They appear in years. And here is where the majority fall away. They grow weary. They become impatient. They expect quick harvests from seeds that take years to bear fruit. They forget that life operates by seasons, and that the greatest rewards are reserved for those who endure. Think of the bamboo tree. For years after it is planted, nothing appears above the ground. Day after day, the farmer waters and tends the soil, but there is no visible sign of growth. To the impatient, it looks like failure. To the casual observer, it looks like wasted effort. But then, in a single season, the bamboo shoots up, growing feet in a matter of weeks, towering into the sky. What changed? The growth was always happening, hidden beneath the surface, as roots spread deep and strong enough to support the height to come. That is the way of discipline. For a long time, progress may be invisible. The work may feel thankless. The results may seem small. But persistence builds roots. And when the time is right, the visible growth comes suddenly, in a way that astonishes the world. Now, why does this matter so much? Because the man who quits too soon never sees that moment. He walks away just before the bamboo breaks the surface. He abandons the field just before the diamonds are uncovered. I've often told the story of Acres of Diamonds, the farmer who sold his land and went off in search of wealth, never realizing that the greatest treasure lay right where he stood. And so it is with discipline. The treasure lies beneath your own feet, in your own field, in your own habits, but it will only be revealed if you persist, if you stay the course long enough for the roots to bring forth the harvest. This is also the path of self-mastery, because discipline is not only about what you achieve, but about who you become. Each day you persist, each time you act despite discouragement, you are shaping your character. You are proving to yourself that you are stronger than moods, stronger than setbacks, stronger than the voices that say, quit. And over the years, this persistence forges something far greater than wealth or recognition. It forges self-respect, the quiet certainty that you can trust yourself, that you will do what you said you would do, no matter what. That is self-mastery. That is the true reward of discipline lived over the long game. So let us be clear, discipline is not for a season. It is not something you try for 30 days and then set aside. It is a way of life. It is a lifelong practice, as natural as breathing, as constant as the rising of the Sunday. The moment you embrace it as such, the struggle eases, because you are no longer bargaining with yourself about when you'll stop. You know you will not stop. You will persist until the work is complete, until the goal is reached, until the harvest is gathered. And when that goal is achieved, you will set another. Because life is not about arriving once and being done. It is about growing, expanding, mastering yourself more fully with each passing year. This is the long game of discipline. It is not dramatic. It is not glamorous. It is steady, patient, unshakable. And those who practice it are the ones who rise. They are the ones who look back on lives not of wasted effort but of steady progress, not of regret but of fulfillment. That is what persistence brings. That is what self-mastery means. And once you taste it, you will never again trade it for the fleeting pleasure of ease. So now we've walked together through the great truth that self-discipline is not punishment, nor is it some rigid, joyless way of living, but the very key to freedom and success. We've seen that motivation, though useful at the start, cannot sustain you. It comes and it goes with moods and seasons. But discipline endures when feelings fade. We've seen that real freedom comes not from indulging every impulse, but from mastering those impulses so that you may live by choice instead of chance. We've seen how discipline is built not in sudden leaps or dramatic resolutions, but in small acts repeated until they become habit. We've seen that habit itself transforms identity, that the man who struggles at first eventually becomes the man for whom discipline is simply a way of being. We've seen how vision and goals supply the fire that keeps discipline alive, and how daily habits anchor it in practice until it is no longer fragile but strong, unshakable. And finally, we've seen that persistence over years turns discipline into mastery, and mastery into a life of growth, achievement, and fulfillment. Now let me leave you with this challenge. For the next 30 days, choose one small discipline. Write it down, tie it to a goal that matters to you, and practice it every day whether you feel like it or not. It could be rising earlier, reading for 15 minutes, writing a page, saving $1, exercising briefly, or practicing gratitude. Whatever it is, keep it simple, keep it steady, and do it daily. For 30 days, let that be your test. And here's what you will find. At first, it will be difficult. Your old habits will resist, your moods will rebel. But as the days pass, something will change. The act will grow easier. The resistance will weaken. The habit will take root. And when you reach the 30th day, you will have proven to yourself something priceless, that you are not ruled by moods or impulses, but by choice, that you can rely on yourself, that you possess the strength of discipline. Remember always that discipline is the bridge between dreams and reality. Without it, dreams remain wishes, floating in the air, never touching the ground. With it, dreams become plans, and plans become achievements. Every man and woman who has ever built anything worthwhile, a fortune, a family, a legacy, has walked across that bridge. And so can you. The only question is whether you will choose to build it. So I leave you with this affirmation. We become what we think about. If you think discipline, you will live in discipline. If you think mastery, you will live in mastery. And once you have built discipline into your life, you will find that nothing is beyond your reach. And now, as we close, I want to invite you to continue this journey with me. Because there is still a hidden law, a principle most never hear, that multiplies the power of discipline into something unstoppable. It is the law that explains why a small number of men and women rise so high, so consistently, while others remain behind. In our next time together, I'll show you that law. It may be the most important discovery you ever make. So join me there, and let us take the next step together into the boundless potential of your own mind.